Welcome back. All right, so it is Power Rankings time, and of course, this will post on Sunday morning, so that's something I intend to continue. It's just the reviews on Saturday night just they don't draw, and I know it's because the Power Rankings are so close behind. So we'll delay the Power Rankings by about 6 hours from where they usually post. It's not a huge deal, but it could make a difference. Anyways, I'm not wearing a jersey. I've been looking for an excuse to wear this shirt. I really like this. I got this from the NHL shop on clearance for like $20. I was like, that looks sharp, and sure enough, it does. And Buffalo is the biggest riser on the board this week. So, that being said, let's go ahead and jump in. We'll go 32 through 1 because that's how power rankings work. Again, at 32 this week, Montreal. The Montreal Canadiens, second week in a row that they are the last place team. And again, there's some encouraging moments here and there in each game, but they're a young team. It's a young defense. Error prone, and we'll see how far this season goes with them playing this way before we see some sort of changes. But at this point, things are just trending in this direction, and I don't see any reason to think there's going to be major changes made by Kent Hughes, but you never know. Number 31, dropping one spot from last week, Chicago. So for the Blackhawks, it is another season of rebuilding, of having a mediocre record and all that fun stuff. And they dropped the one spot this week, but Bedard started getting points again, so there's reason to think that things aren't all completely lost around the Chicago Blackhawks. But yeah, 31st this week for Chicago. Number 30, dropping 6 spots from last week, the Ducks. Can't call them the Dostals. Dostal pulled them out of that bottom row. And then it's like reality set in. I honestly, and I said this in the review for their last game too, I think they're overplaying him. Now that John Gibson's been activated off injured reserve, you're going to have to give Gibson some games and hope that he can tend the net nearly as well as Dostal. And so we'll see how things go from here. And how long is it until Reimer then would be on waivers, would be the question I'd ask, because I don't think they're going to carry 3 goaltenders, so we shall see. And would Reimer clear waivers at this point in time? Another question mark for me. But yeah, the Ducks this week, they are number 30 on the board. Number 29, dropping 2 spots from last week, San Jose. So for the Sharks, I mean, the reality is the Sharks are still very much a team that will need some help going forward and some good fortune and all that fun stuff. But hey, Vanacek had the 50 save game this week, and San Jose has won, what is it, 4 of their last 6. So still, they're not last on the board. I got to say, Sharks fans, they're not last on the board. That's 2 weeks in a row. I hope it doesn't go to their heads. Number 28, moving up 1 spot from last week, Pittsburgh. I do think Pittsburgh is playing better and that there's a chance that they're going to be able to get things figured out a little bit, but they're going to need to do it on the regular. It's going to have to be not every other game. They're going to have to string together some wins here. And that game against Carolina was tough, but they bounced back the next night with that win over Washington. So we shall see this coming week where Pittsburgh ends up, say, next Saturday/Sunday, right? So, yeah. Number 28 this week, the Pittsburgh Penguins. Number 27, dropping 6 spots from last week. That seems like a lot, but that is accurate. No, dropping number 27, dropping 4 spots from last week. This is what threw me off. Utah, I'm reading the wrong number. Utah drops to number 27. See, at the end of Saturday, I've been watching hockey all day, and today I did like all the videos during the day too, and my brain is just gone. It's like, I'm not reading. I'm done. I'm sleeping. So Utah drops to number 27. They're getting to extra time enough that the fact they've only won 6 out of 15 games isn't hurting them, because they do have the 3 losses in extra time, but they're just having trouble with getting everything to work all at the same time. The good fortune they had early in the season didn't last that long, and it does feel like we might be looking at another 500 or a little below season for this hockey club, who moved from Arizona this past summer. But it does look like there's going to be some more time needed before they're really truly a playoff contender. Understanding that they have been, and I think they still are as I'm recording this, in a playoff spot, but I don't think they stay there, is the way that I'm trying to frame this. Number 26, dropping 6 spots from last week, Nashville. Nashville got a win tonight over Utah, which felt big because when a team is struggling with its confidence and they're not getting victories, any victory feels big. So maybe Nashville can start to turn things around. Maybe this is the start of that. I honestly have my fingers crossed for the Nashville Predators. I would love to see them get back into a playoff spot and see what Stamkos and Marchessault can do in a playoff series with Nashville, because that'd be bonkers. But at any rate, this week they're number 26. We'll see this coming week if they turn it around. Number 25, dropping 3 spots from last week, Detroit. Detroit find themselves in the bottom row. And it's too bad because tonight they did outplay the Rangers. They just couldn't score. And then Husso allows 3 goals on 23 shots. And so Detroit finds themselves in the bottom row this week. This is supposed to be the year that this doesn't happen anymore. And yet, there they are. Bottom row for the Detroit Red Wings. So, again, another team to watch this coming week. Because as you can see, it's very tumultuous in the bottom row. A lot of teams moving down into the bottom row, meaning some teams have moved out of the bottom row, including the team in 24th, moving up 4 spots from last week. And I telegraphed this. I said in the review tonight, I think Philadelphia's been playing better lately. And so even though their record is still not great, I think Philadelphia's playing pretty well. And they move up to 24th. So we'll see if they can move up higher. This feels like it might be as high as I can put them. Based on the fact that they don't have enough offense. They definitely need some more offense. Erson's back, which is good. Fedotov's game this week that he played, he looked pretty good too. So even though Kolosov got hurt, now you've got Erson back. Philadelphia could be okay. Now we just have to get their games to stop destroying the app. Whereas when you click on their games, you get an errors occurred. It happened in tonight's game, and it happened in the previous one as well, and I don't find it funny. Number 23, dropping 2 spots from last week, Columbus. So the Blue Jackets are not in the bottom row, but if they have another week upcoming like they've had this past week, they will very likely be in said bottom row. It's too bad because a couple weeks ago it looked like there was a real reason for some optimism around the Columbus Blue Jackets. They were playing some good hockey, but it really has not lasted. And so tonight against LA, they had some good moments there, here, and there, but in the end, they end up losing that game by a score of 5-2. And so, Columbus drops a couple of spots this week. Number 22, moving up 9 spots from last week, the Islanders. I don't have any idea from one week to the next what to necessarily expect from the Islanders. They're at 500. They got a point tonight against New Jersey in a game where they probably should have had 2, but they did get that point against New Jersey. So overall, I'm going to put them ahead of these other teams here, but keeping in mind that they have been as low as 31 this week, we'll see what they do this upcoming week. If Patrick Waugh can motivate them to get their game together and start stringing some wins together and, put themselves in a pretty healthy spot to make the playoffs. Number 21, moving up 4 spots from last week, Boston. The Boston Bruins are still having trouble with, tonight it was shots, right? Getting shots on Ottawa, not really. They played a poor third period. And then in the overtime, they end up allowing that goal very early to Tkachuk. So for the Bruins, I'm still of the mind that, they've won 7 out of 16 games. I think they're an average to below average team at this point, thus they're standing overall. We'll see if they can. Basically, they're going to have Swayman and Korpisalo carry them. They're going to need to win games 2-1, 3-2. Really low scoring, probably low event games, and I'm not sure that they're built in that way to win on the regular. But we're going to find out, I think, in the next couple of weeks here. Number 20, dropping 2 spots from last week, Seattle. And I've seen comments from Seattle fans here and there saying, hey, you could probably put us last. I wouldn't go that far. They did drop a couple spots. They did win their final game this week, so there's reason to be optimistic that Seattle might be able to turn this around. And we're going to find out, we're 3 weeks? American Thanksgiving is late in the month of November. So it's a matter of, having a good couple of weeks be above that line when we reach American Thanksgiving, and then that's all we'll hear about is, Seattle's above the line at American Thanksgiving. So, but at any rate, Seattle's still in the mix. I believe they're still in the mix because there are a lot of teams in the West that I think have flaws. So Seattle just has to get on a bit of a roll. Number 19, dropping 3 spots from last week, St. Louis. They took that 8-1 drubbing like champions tonight against Washington. Not cup champions, but sure, like champs. They took that 8-1 drubbing, and I say that because I didn't see like brawls and things of that nature. St. Louis just, yeah, it was a rough night. Rough night for Binnington's numbers, and pretty reflective of how dangerous Washington's attack is and how porous that St. Louis defense can be. And you put those two things together, you get what we had tonight. Number 18, dropping 8 spots from last week, Ottawa. And this drop would have been further if they'd lost against Boston. They did not. But Ottawa, they're at 500, but they've lost some games. So they lost to the Islanders, they lost to the Sabres, then they beat Boston tonight. I have no idea what to expect from the Ottawa Senators from one night to the next. And it really does feel like previous Novembers. It's again, the other night I'm hearing announcers talking about, well, this Ottawa team feels different and they're not accepting losing this year. And I keep thinking, didn't we hear that last year at points? Didn't we hear that the year before at points too? I think people are just so wanting Ottawa to be a playoff team and to get better that we're kind of hoping for some wish fulfillment. And it's just the consistency. Consistency is the issue with almost every team in this half of the board, which includes number 17, who move up 2 spots from last week, Edmonton. Edmonton played a fantastic game tonight in Vancouver, which is good because Vancouver played a terrible game tonight against Edmonton, and you put those two things together, that score is completely accurate. So for the Oilers, they move up a couple of spots. They're going to be a playoff team. I would be very surprised if they continue to put up mediocre numbers. They're just too good of a team for that. And I see people talking about the goaltending, the defense, yada, yada, yada. But it's all the same talk we have every year. And then the Oilers eventually go on a run. And they end up having home ice advantage in the playoffs. So I will not be surprised this year if that happens again. But that's your bottom row, or your bottom row and your second row. And again, the Oilers very likely to be in those top 2 rows this coming week. I just could not have them in the top 2 rows this week, based on other results before tonight's. Number 16, moving up 1 spot from last week, Colorado. Now, Colorado is 1 game below 500. However, that game against Winnipeg, they probably should have won it. Just Hellebuck said no. But I couldn't bump them up when they had that game against Winnipeg. So they move up a spot tonight for that win over Carolina. I did wonder to myself, like, if Freddie Anderson's in the net, if he's healthy, what's the score of this game look like? How does that translate? Would he have allowed all those goals that Martin did? And so for Colorado, they move up to 16, and if they can follow up tonight's result with another strong result, they will move up on the board during the week as well. So that's the reason for them being at 16. Number 15, moving up 11 spots from last week, Buffalo. Buffalo can be a playoff team. Think about it. You've got 3 really good young defensemen in Power, Dahlin, and Byram. And right now, all 3 of them are playing well. You've got depth scoring up front. You've got a potential star player with Tage Thompson, who's starting to play like a star player again. Luukkonen's playing really well, and Levi's played well when he's been called upon as well. Buffalo can be a playoff team. I wish I could say Buffalo is a playoff team. I wish I could say Buffalo will be a playoff team. The closest I can get is saying Buffalo can be a playoff team. That's the reason they've moved up. The other reason they move up 11 spots is because everybody's been so wildly inconsistent that when Buffalo has a pretty consistently good week, this is what happens. They move up that much. Hopefully they can stay in the top half of the board. I talked in that rebuilding video earlier today about how it can be kind of tedious watching hockey at times when you know who's going to win, you know who's going to be above the line and who's going to be below. If Buffalo could be above that playoff line, say, again, at American Thanksgiving, we'll have something to talk about then, and it might generate some interest locally and might even draw in some hockey fans to say, hey, what's going on in Buffalo? What's happening there? Speaking of which, at 14, dropping 1 spot from last week, is Calgary. Calgary's still playing well enough that, and they're getting enough points that they're keeping themselves in the conversation for the playoffs. It's over a month into the season, so that's a win. It does leave Craig Conroy in kind of an interesting spot because he can justify right now going out looking for another forward because they're in a spot where they could make the playoffs. So you go out, you get another forward, maybe things, get even better for them. You can also justify saying, you know what, this isn't going to be the year and we're not necessarily buying. The one thing I'd say too is if you did watch my not expansion, my rebuild video earlier today and how many teams are in rebuilds, I think Calgary should do a retool, not sell off any more veteran players. You've got guys who want to be there, keep them, and just look to get draft picks and stuff like that with rentals at the deadline. But players who want to stay, you keep them around. And I think there's some teams who've done rebuilds that probably wish they'd done it that way. I think the complete and total teardowns mean that you're looking at least half a decade of mediocre hockey, which is a lot when you're still charging fans the exact same amount of money for tickets. So, yeah, number 14 this week is Calgary, and they're defying gravity so far in the power rankings. Number 13, and gravity took over this team, Tampa. Tampa, a week ago, I was talking about how they were one of, top 9 teams, probably contenders. Did not look like a contender this week. And so for the Lightning, things a little bit shaky. We'll see how this coming week goes for them. They have some good tests coming up. They have a game against Winnipeg coming up. That'll be a good litmus test for them. That's at home. And so who knows? Maybe home cooking helps them turn things around and they end up moving back up the board. But for right now, I have Tampa Bay at number 13. Number 12, moving up 2 spots. And they would have moved up further, but Vancouver can't win at home. And so I'm torn. It's like if I had a power rankings board here, and the one over here is the road Canucks, they'd be right near or at the top. The home Canucks be near the bottom. They've won 1 out of 6 at home. And so, yeah, the Canucks end up 12th this week, but that loss against Edmonton, if they don't bounce back and have a really good game the next time out, there's definitely reason for concern, especially with the fact that they're on this homestand that it's weird, right? Now they're a really good road team and a bad home team. And last year, they were fantastic at home. This is where I remind people. During last season, when Boston, Vancouver, and Dallas were all top teams in their divisions, I said, I'm really enjoying this. I'm enjoying the regular season for what it is. And this is why. Because I know it doesn't happen back-to-back years. And Boston's not likely to win the Atlantic. Vancouver's not likely to win the Pacific. There's still that chance. Dallas, I don't think they're going to end up winning the Central. There is still a chance, but it's been a rough start to the season comparatively speaking with last season where I could just have fun. Oh, look, all my teams are in the top row. Not anymore. Number 11, moving up 1 spot from last week, Toronto. The Toronto Maple Leafs, strong finish to the week. The win over Montreal just showing that they can win the games that they're supposed to, and they've looked pretty good. They've had a couple of bad games this season, but who's the only team that's laid a defeat and a beating at that on the Winnipeg Jets? Toronto. Now, they did then lose against Columbus, where they got beaten 6-2, but they're the only team that's got a win over Toronto, or win over Winnipeg. And so, yeah, the Leafs move up 1 spot this week. They've looked pretty good, and they've done that without Matthews. So that says a lot for the coaching. It says a lot for just the way the team's structured. And I think Chris Tanev has made a big difference to that blue line, too. I will say that. I think they overblow the team's playing different storyline, but I think Tanev's definitely been a big help for them with his shot blocking. Moving into the top 10, moving up 5 spots from last week, the LA Kings. Now, they did lose against Vancouver, true, but the rest of the week for them was pretty darn good. And LA's playing pretty well. Against Columbus tonight, they end up getting that victory. And yeah, the Kings are good on the road. They're pretty good at home. And so the game against Vancouver, I'm kind of looking at and saying, okay, however, LA bounces back and gets the win. Vancouver gets destroyed at home. So LA will be ahead of Vancouver. Coming into today, Vancouver was ahead of LA. But coming out of tonight's results, Vancouver ends up behind LA this week on the power rankings. Because just because one team beats another does not necessarily mean they are ahead of that team on the power rankings, which I've explained before. It doesn't mean that you have to be ahead of the team that you beat on the power rankings that week. All right, number 9, the last team on this row, same spot as last week. It's Dallas. I have some concerns with Dallas. So the back-to-back losses against Florida, I looked at and went, It's Florida. The loss today against Winnipeg, you just want more. The effort was there when the game was out of reach. And it's difficult when you see Dallas have 9 shots in the first 30 minutes to look and say, well, I mean, it is Winnipeg. I feel like Dallas can play better, and the fact that they have shown against both Winnipeg and Florida that they're not on that level is concerning, and so they stay just outside the top row this week for me. Number 8, dropping 5 spots from last week, New York Rangers. Tough week for the Rangers overall. They did bounce back and win tonight against Detroit, which put them back in the top row, because coming into today, they were 9th. They switched spots with Dallas today as a result of today's games. So the Rangers are back in the top row, but are there concerns? Yep, there are. But Jonathan Quick with a great shutout tonight, and I think the Rangers are going to be fine. And if you're going to have concerns, have them in November. Straighten them out in November, and then in April, you're good to go, and then you hold up a silver chalice in June, and you end the drought that's lasted since 1994 and win your second Stanley Cup since 1940. So we'll see if that's what the Rangers' game plan is. Number 7, moving up 4 spots from last week, New Jersey. New Jersey's first in the division. New Jersey's playing pretty well. And I thought tonight against the Islanders, when they were down and they showed that fight back, good. That's something that New Jersey seemed to lack last year. And New Jersey last year, if their goaltenders' numbers weren't very good, they didn't win. This year, they've shown a sign that even if the goaltenders' numbers aren't very good, they may have a chance at winning the game. So that, to me, is a victory in and of itself. And so New Jersey's back in the top row, 1 spot ahead of the New York Rangers. We'll see if that continues this coming week, remembering that is quite the rivalry in the National Hockey League. Number 6, moving up 2 spots from last week, Vegas. Vegas they never quite go away. This is year 7, and Vegas is always a top team somehow. Looking at that team going into this season, I was like, well, I mean, they'll still be a playoff team probably, but they don't look as dangerous as in seasons previous. And now here we are. They're just as dangerous as in seasons previous. Stone and Eichel have this incredible chemistry together. Their blue line's playing well. And the goaltending duo of Hill and Samsonov has been quite good. Interestingly enough, I do find it odd that he prefers Samsonov, because I looked that up, because that's been a discussion point. Since the correct pronunciation in Russian is Samsonov. That is the correct pronunciation. He prefers Samsonov. So there you go. I am willing to say Samsonov, that's how he wants it produced. Or said, even though when Pedersen wanted his name said as Peterson, everybody said, no, you shut up. We're calling you Pedersen, because Peterson is not your name. I found that so weird. Anyways, number 6, Vegas. Number 5, and moving up 1 spot from last week, Washington Capitals. Yep, Caps are top 5. Their offense is fantastic. Their goaltending's been pretty darn good. Thompson had a good game tonight. And so, yeah, Washington just, slowly climbing up the board. They were number 6 last week. They were number 8 the week before. So they are very slowly moving up the board. As long as you're moving up, that's good, right? So, yeah, the Washington Capitals, number 5. They did get beaten by Carolina, but Carolina's Carolina. They haven't shown up on the board yet. So, yeah, Washington, number 5. Number 4, same spot as last week, is Carolina. So for the Hurricanes, they are number 4 on the power rankings board this week. The loss tonight against Colorado, I was torn on that, because as I mentioned with Colorado, the question that I was asking myself was, okay, so they play different. They're going to play different in front of Martin than they might in front of Kochetkov. And so, they end up 4th this week. I'm leaving them the same. If they have some defensive miscues this coming week, and if goals against starts to go up significantly, then Carolina absolutely will get moved down in the rankings. But for this week, they stay in the same spot. Number 3, moving up 2 spots from last week, Minnesota. So the Minnesota Wild move up 2 spots from where they were last week. I have no idea how this has happened, unless we can simply look and say Kaprizov is playing maybe Hart level. You can have a debate about the Hart Trophy. Maybe I'll do a video on that on Sunday. That sounds like a good idea. Players that I think you could make an argument for the Hart Trophy, because I think Kaprizov's in that category. Ovechkin's getting there. Shesterkin's got to be in that conversation. Stone and Eichel would both be in that conversation, I would think. So do they cancel each other out? But it is hard to argue against Kaprizov. He's been absolutely fantastic. 6 3-point games so far this season. That's good for a season, much less a month. And so, yeah, Kaprizov, when his contract's due, that $9 million a year, that's going to be pennies compared to what he's going to get paid with that next contract. I think he's lining himself up to be one of the top 10, top 5 guys in the league at the time that contract gets signed. So, yeah, I know it's not coming up necessarily all that soon, but it's never too early to speculate on, when a guy's having a year like this, how much more money he's going to make on his next contract. So, number 2 this week, the Florida Panthers. Florida, there's no reason to move them down. There's no reason to move them at all. The Florida Panthers are still, for my money, the best team in the East. They're playing a really smart game. Tonight against Philly, Philly held them in check, and yet it's a shootout victory, but Florida finds a way to come out with 2 points. I cannot look at the Florida Panthers and say, well, clearly there's a reason to move them down. They've won 7 in a row. So they're 3 wins away from getting a 10-game winning streak video, which I have been informed is a complete and total jinx, which is fair, I guess. But yeah, Florida number 2 this week on the power rankings, which means number 1, again, this is 4 weeks in a row, the Jets. The Winnipeg Jets, 14-1. The best team in the NHL right now. They have a huge test coming up with this massive road trip. I think it's 8 of their next 9 are on the road. And they have some tough teams to play. They have a home and home against Florida. So we will find out what Winnipeg's made of by the end of November. And it will be interesting to see if they stay in first place or if they end up moving down into this area. Because it's not like if they have a rough time over the next 9 games that they're going to be down here. They're playing against some of the top teams in the league. So they'd still be in this area. But it will be a good test to see, are they really better than everybody else? Or have they had maybe some favorable scheduling? Are they just, red hot and they're going to come off of that? We'll know. We'll know by the end of November. But we'll know next Sunday morning where they're going to reside and if they're going to stay first again. So my question for everybody watching this is, of Winnipeg's first, how far above Florida do you feel that they are if you see Winnipeg is above Florida? To me, they're very close. And so the home and home against Florida is going to be very telling for me, because Florida and to me, Florida and Vegas are playing a similar style. No matter what the score is at any point in the game, I expect them to win. I expect wins from Florida. I expect it with Vegas. Of course, I'm expecting with Winnipeg because they're 14-1. Washington's getting into that category too, where I just expect them to win. So let me know your thoughts. Which team are you the most impressed with right now in the National Hockey League? Don't forget to hit like and subscribe in the event you may not have done so already. But thank you guys so much for all your support. It is greatly appreciated. I love doing the power rankings. I love the power rankings board. And I've had people asking too. This was made for me by a subscriber. I did pay him for this. He shipped it from Alberta to me. And I've been using this now for years, and it's been fantastic. So there you go. Power rankings for another week. I'm just going to go lay down, watch some TV, and then I'm going to go to sleep because it's been a long day. But thank you guys so much for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.